The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available
I compute and obey.
now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
It just occurred to me that I'm not completely sure if game week is one word or two. But I don't care because it is game week. Welcome to the program, and we're loaded up. We'll be joined by our in-season guest, Spencer Riley, here shortly, former Vol, to give us some perspective on Tennessee. Remember this time last year, we were talking about, is Cooper Mays going to play? Could it be ready for the Florida game? Nice not to have that conversation this time this year. And I'll remind you that the Vol Report, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, is on right now our YouTube channel. So hit like and subscribe, hit that bell as well for the notifications so you know when we drop stuff, and there's going to be a lot. We'll join you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. So Tennessee's issues at left guard, we're going to discuss that. How serious are they? Because Tennessee still has not named a starter. I think Josh Heupel knows who he's going to start, but it's still a little bit up in the air based off conversations I had over the weekend. Is that a big concern or just kind of a concern? Now, also, we're going to talk about a column that Jimmy Hyams wrote that I thought was very insightful. However, I completely disagree with it. Jimmy Hyams joins us each and every Wednesday, but he's at the U.S. Open, so can't defend himself. But we'll have him do so eventually. I think this is Tennessee's deepest roster. Jimmy would argue the other side. We've got this day in Tennessee football history. How about Florida State? My goodness. Florida State loses to Georgia Tech. How that helps the Vols. The stat of the day, SEC power rankings. And we'll have Hooker's Corner talking some recruiting later in the program. Caleb, it's game week. How excited are you? This is fantastic.
It is. Football is back, and I mean it. Did it not start with a bang on Saturday? Whoa! I'm still not a fan of Week 0, but I will say if I'm getting to Week 0, that is fun right there.
It did start with a bang, so let's go ahead and get to that right now. It is today's tough question, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Have I told you about Work Trucks? If you're a contractor, you got to know Work Trucks. All about trucks. Right truck, right place, right time. Work Trucks. Florida State loses to Georgia Tech in the final seconds over the weekend. Let me ask you this, Caleb Calhoun. Your thoughts on how that helps the Vols, hurts the Vols, has no effect on the Vols in the college football playoff. And then I'm going to correct you on something you said earlier, that the college football playoff would diminish the regular season. Well, I don't think so, because I think Florida State might have played themselves out of the college football playoff, but they have the opportunity to play themselves back in. But let's talk about how this affects Tennessee and the SEC. Your thoughts on Florida State losing? Are they college football playoff bound? I don't think so.
Well, it actually certainly opens up, to be fair. It definitely cements what I said was going to be the case, which was that it cements that there's probably not going to be more than one ACC team in the playoff now. Even if Florida State were to win out and win the ACC, and say Clemson, for instance, goes undefeated but loses to Florida State in the ACC title, I think the committee would say, yeah, maybe you're 12-1 Clemson, but you didn't win your conference, and your one loss is to Florida State, and they have a bad loss, so you're not going into the playoffs. Sorry, we're going to put a 10-2 SEC team in instead. I thought they were going to do that anyway. I think this just cements it. There is no way more than one ACC team is going to the postseason. So now, obviously, if you're Tennessee, that opens the door for another playoff spot. I said from the start the SEC is going to have 5 teams in this year. And so I think I still maintain that's the case. And the loss on Saturday just further cements that.
Okay, we'll discuss that a little bit more, but we're joined now by our very special guest as Spencer Riley joins us. I'll remind you that we're brought to you in part by our friends at Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. And I'll tell you this, time is money. So Work Trucks, contractors, you have to take note of their cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, no dealership run around. They'll take care of you. Work Trucks with an X. That's Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. That's Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks, proud supporter of the Vols. They'll fit your needs to a T. We'll talk more about that Florida State loss and how it might affect the Vols, but Spencer Riley is available now, so we want to bring him up as there's the man coming off a big win for Jeff County. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Good. It's just a crazy Monday here, so we're just trying to get after it and get everything ready to rock and roll. So just know if I have to drop off real quick, just understand I apologize, and I'll try to rejoin as soon as I can, okay?
I understand, buddy. You look like you lost some weight. Have you been trimming?
I have. I'm going to try to be less fat, man. So it's a good day. So
there you go. All right, let's get rolling because Tennessee has not named a starter at the left guard position. You played center. You won a national championship playing center, and I'm just curious how big of a concern. Because we believe that they're going to come out with the bracket. You know, there's going to be 2 starters, co-starters. Sure. How big of a concern is that heading into game week, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, with our opening game being UTC, I don't think it's really that big a concern. I mean, because whoever the 2 guys are that's fighting for that spot, they got a chance to prove themselves during game reps, and they've had a chance to all preseason camp and camp up to this point. And, you know, this will be the chance to have some real live bullets in Neyland Stadium and see how they perform and produce. It's kind of part of how you as you look at game 1 there. It's how I would look at it as Coach Eberle, I'm sure, is with week 1.
Caleb, I want you to jump in there, but does it affect as a center who your left guard is? Do you play any different given their strengths and weaknesses when you're at Cooper Mays' position?
Sure. I get what you're asking there. You know, I mean, you just got to know who you're playing beside, right? And you've had enough time that I'm sure they have rotated throughout camp and rotated throughout preseason practice. And this week, that they know, Cooper knows who's beside him. He knows what their strengths are. He knows what their weaknesses are. And, you know, I mean, as a center, you got to know that. You got to know who you're playing beside anyways. It doesn't matter if it's game 1 or game 10. So you got to figure that out as you go. I don't think it's a big deal, but.
Spencer,
go ahead. Go.
Yeah, so I know you don't think it's a big deal. I know you think things can be figured out. But, I mean, isn't it a concern if throughout all of fall camp no one was ever able to – is it one thing? I know it's one thing if you have 2 good players and you can't figure out who's better, but isn't it there always a concern if in fall camp nobody's able to step forward and be able to prove that they can take the job? Like if they can't do it in August, are we sure on the practice field? Are we sure they're going to be able to do it as games roll in over the course of the season?
I mean, I'll just be honest with you. As a coach, I would sit here and say, hey, look, I'm going to see which one can do, which one can't do. You know what I mean? You gotta give us somebody. You gotta give them an opportunity to be successful or to fail. On game day. You know what I mean? That's where you learn. That's really when, at the end of the day, that's where the live bullets come flying. That's when the game speed's different. You know what I mean? That's where you got to try to figure it out and go from there and just get after it. I mean, I'll sit here and be honest with you. I could go into week 1, year in and year out, and not know who one is, and it doesn't bother me because I've got, as an offensive line coach, you feel like you got ever how many you have to play. You know, I mean, I feel like I got 7 guys that can play. Played 6 Friday night. So I mean, you know, I mean, I don't. That's not a big concern for me as a coach. You know, what I mean, it's just something that we got to have more than 5. So, you know, I mean, you're trying to figure out which is the best piece to put in at that point in time.
If you have a question for Spencer, go ahead and post it on the message board or on Twitter, and we'll get that to him. But I'm going to stick on this for a second. And Spencer, what about the whole notion of chemistry? Is there something to that, or is that overblown a little bit?
No, I think there is something to that, right? You know, you got to find out which pieces have the best chemistry. And, you know what I mean? Sometimes the guy who has the best chemistry with everybody around them may not be the most talented guy. You know what I mean? I wasn't the most talented guy, but I had the most chemistry with everybody else. You know what I mean? And then it's kind of make you try to, and the old saying is don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. You know what I mean? You got to figure out what's best for your group of 5, not the individuals. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, offensive line is 5 guys working as one, where you got 4 receivers or 3 receivers out there, and they don't have to really work as one. One can be wrong and nobody ever knows. But in an offensive line, if you're wrong, everybody knows. There's 107,000 people know that you screwed up. But they don't know that when receivers do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. He's Spencer Riley. Hit the like and subscribe button. Spencer, nice enough to join us, former Vol, each and every Monday during football season. He's coming off a big win. Caleb, I know you want to jump in there. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, Spencer. So in Josh Heupel's offense in particular, you know, everybody sees how fast it runs and things like that. But it does seem like there's a lot of, to me, am I crazy for thinking the interior of the offensive line is the most underrated, important part of this offense? Because a lot of what sets up the big plays are those vertical rushing attacks. He doesn't do a lot of stretch plays. Does a lot of just north-south. And how crucial does that make the guard position relative to other?
Well, you got to be able to move people interiorly, right? Tackles, they're guys that, hey, you need to be a physical guy, but the middle 3 guys got to be road graders. And they got to be able to pound it and be able to take the beating day in and day out. And I think those are very important keys because, I mean, in Tennessee's offense, it's downhill runs, right? Where we are big edge, we're a big outside zone team. Tennessee's big a dart and inside zone run team. You know what I mean? So that's where they hit their vertical creases is right there in the middle of the offensive line and in the center part of the defense. You know what I mean? Because Tennessee does so much in their passing game. They play with 53 1/3 football field. That's what they play with. Every time they step out there, they make you defend 53 1/3. So, you know what I mean? So you gotta do different things with your numbers and your box as a defense, try to get the numbers matched up on for them defensively, but for offensively, we're looking for the best option at that particular time. You know what I mean? So we got to be good in the middle for sure because our tall sweeps are little bubbles. You know what I mean? Screenplays. That's how we get the ball on the edge at Tennessee.
How many times did you go into a season knowing who your starting 5 would be during your time at Tennessee? Just absolutely no question. These are the 5.
Probably 2 or 3, maybe. You know what I mean? So, well, probably 2 would be, I would say 2. I don't remember the years. I'm just trying to scan back through. We returned in '97. I think most of the, you know what I mean, that would have been the year that we returned a bunch of guys, and you knew who the 5 were going to be.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there any chance that Josh Heupel knows in the back of his head who the first teamer is, and he's keeping everybody like Shamarad Umarov and Jackson Lampley fighting for that position that I think Andre Keurig is going to have?
Of course. You know what I mean? I think coaches know who they're going to play. You know what I mean? You try to keep competing because competition breeds success at the end of the day. And, you know, when you want to keep fighting, you want to keep getting those guys improved and day in and day out.
All right, great stuff from Spencer Riley, the former Vol. He had a big win for Jeff County over the weekend. Already some congratulations on our message board to you as Spencer a winner no matter where he goes. Now, the other question I wanted to ask you is your most famous season opener during your time at Tennessee was Syracuse. That was a very good football team. Now they face now they face Chattanooga, which, no offense to Chattanooga, I've got a lot of respect for what they do at their program, having spent some time in that city. So I don't want this to sound like I'm degrading them, but there is no comparison talent level. Which would you
shouldn't be
right? Which would you rather face? Because there are advantages, I would think, of getting attention if it's a good opponent, as opposed to figuring some things out in what should feel like a preseason game.
I mean, everybody has their own philosophy, right? I have my own philosophy. I want to play somebody early. It's tough. You know what I mean? I want to try to play a tough schedule early to set you up for later in the year, especially as college footballs went to the playoff system, right? You got to be able to, but you got to be able to get to the playoffs too. So I mean, there's a double-edged sword there. You want to play a quality opponent that gets you ready for those opportunities down the road. You know what I mean? Like when we played Oak Ridge Friday night, it's a great football game. You know what I mean? So we just it set us up for hopefully moving down the road.
Yeah, Spencer, one of the things that I gather is when you have a tough win early, whatever that win be, it does seem to bring a team together a lot more. Pitt 2 years ago was the second game of the year, but it was an ugly overtime win, and Tennessee should have won by more, but winning the way they did, I felt made them closer. That 98 team, did that Syracuse win make you guys closer at all just because of what you had to fight to win that game?
Well, I just think it was a very good football team for us. You know what I mean? That we worked daily to get better and just continue to improve as we moved around each and every day. Do I think it made us better? Do I think it made us closer? We're already pretty close, man. I mean, that's the reason we were able to go out and come up with that win. Totally different, in my opinion.
Interesting. So when you talk about an opponent like UTC, let's assume that things go according to plan, as most would think, and Tennessee's up 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first half. What do you hope to gain, assuming that's what are your goals as a coach, assuming that's one-sided? What are your goals other than getting the win, which is obviously the biggest thing?
Well, I think too, with the way the rule is read now and the way the rule works, they can play in any 4 games throughout the year and still be redshirted, right?
That's a great point.
I think one, hey, could be an opportunity to get some young guys in and play and see where they're at early in the year, right? To where the pressure level is not like a pressure cooker. And then you get them in a game, then you can pick and choose when you want to try to get those guys in. You're trying to see if they can do it. You know what I mean? And can they be a contributor? Do they need to be somebody that you put on more special teams because they have now developed into a quality backup?
Caleb?
Yeah. So, Spencer, if there are questions about does the difference between an easy or tough opponent, does it also depend on maybe how sure the coaching staff is of their roster? Like if they're a little less sure, would they rather have an easier opponent so they can maybe work in some few things and test some things out?
I mean, for sure. You know what I mean? I look at it that way as well. You kind of see where you're at, where your program's at, and what do they need at that point in time. So I can see why Chattanooga is a great opportunity for Chattanooga. It's an in-state. And look, too, you look at it from an institution standpoint, is University of Tennessee is playing another Tennessee school, and it's definitely a good opportunity for the other schools in the state of Tennessee to get to come to Tennessee and play. It helps their recruiting. It helps our recruiting. It gets our fan bases ready to go and be ready to rock and roll for the next ball game.
Spencer, if you're a coach and it's an in-state opponent, I know Josh Heupel likes putting up points. I know that he's mindful of some of the records based off what I've been told. Do you treat them any different because they're an in-state school if you have an opportunity to, I don't know, drop 60 on them?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, their job is to stop you. You know what I mean? It's not your job. It's not your job to take care of the score. It's your job to stop it. So
Absolutely.
you
Yep.
score 60. You score 60. That's on them for not stopping you.
Nah, I agree with that. Hit the like and subscribe button. And Caleb, feel free to jump in there as I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by our good friend Don Self. Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their reputation on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net, donself.net to check.
That's my guy. That's my insurance guy right there.
That's your insurance guy?
Sure is, man. Don Self's a great man.
Don Self is a great man. How awesome is that? How in the world did you? I don't know how you got hooked up with Don Self, but everybody
when I was at UTC, that's how I got hooked up with him. And he's been my insurance guy ever since.
It's fantastic. All right, Caleb, get us back on football because insurance is settled. It's Don Self.
100%.
So, Spencer, going back to the Syracuse game, you guys talk you are already really close, and I believe that because I've heard a lot of the stories. But after beating Syracuse, y'all did finally get over the hump and beat Florida for the first time in 6 years. And I'll never forget watching that game, thinking you guys just seemed so much more relaxed facing Florida that year than you did in years previous facing Florida. That was just from an outsider's perspective. So how much of an impact did the Syracuse game have on that? Did overcoming that Syracuse win, getting the relief of the win, how much of that did that have y'all kind of a little more relaxed for the Florida game that time around?
Well, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't tell you if we were more relaxed or not. I mean, hell, it was the next ball game in the line of games we had to play. You know what I mean? So it didn't matter who you're line up against. That's what we're going to go do is just play the next opponent. It happened to be Florida, and found a way to win another football game in an ugly fashion. And sometimes at the end of the day, an ugly win turns out to be the prettiest victory.
Very true. Let me ask you this. When you're getting your kids' attention, is it a benefit in preseason camp and the off season to have a name or a very good opponent to say, hey, listen, if you don't show up, Florida State, you could get embarrassed. Is that any sort of motivating factor as a coach when you do have a strong opponent to start the season?
Sure. Here's the way I look at that from a coaching perspective and then from a player's perspective. No, as a coach, you know what I mean? As a coach, your kids need to understand that, hey, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We got to give our best every time we step on the football field. And we got to play at the highest level we can play at. We got to play at a championship caliber level every time we play. And it doesn't matter if you're playing tiddlywinks, checkers, whatever. We got to play at the championship level every day. That's from a coach's perspective. From a player's perspective, it shouldn't matter. You're getting to go out and play the greatest game in the world against in front of 107,000 people. We got to go out and be freaking dominant because that's what our fan base wants.
Yep. Good stuff. Spencer, who you got this week?
We got Sevier County. That's Sevier County. Smoky Bears.
All right. Bring home a championship. We're rooting for you, and we look forward to visiting with you next week.
Sounds great, guys. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks. Have a great day.
Spencer Riley, great stuff. I think coaches say either, don't you, Caleb? That coaches will say in the off season that it was nice to have, or they'll say after the first game. They're not going to say Chattanooga's terrible. I want to play Chattanooga because they're horrible. But you can say after the game, that's a chance to fine tune stuff. Whereas if you play a Syracuse or a strong opponent to start the season, like when Georgia Tech played Florida State, I do believe that Georgia Tech was probably told in the offseason, you better prepare or you're going to get embarrassed in Dublin by Florida State. I think that can be a motivating factor as well. So I think you can use it to either advantage.
I think you can. I think the latter is more of an advantage. I'm just going to be honest, guys. And I'm sorry to say this, shouldn't say this, but Chattanooga, there's very little you can learn from that game. And even if you figure out guys that can play a certain way, okay, maybe they can play against Chattanooga, but that doesn't mean they can play it against Florida. And I mean, I said this last year with, don't want to talk about him anymore because he's not on the roster. But Elijah Herring, when he stepped in for Keenan Peely being hurt, okay, yeah, he understood all the fundamentals of playing the position, and he was physically gifted enough to where he was elite against Austin Peay and he was elite against Virginia. Then SEC play happened, and the lateral quickness just wasn't there.
No, I don't think that you can look at a game tape and learn much, but I think you can learn a lot from players in terms of how they approach the game. I look at Jacoby Thomas, for instance. He's been a lifelong Tennessee fan, but he's never seen a Tennessee game inside the stadium. So is he going to go bonkers? There are people who, when they run through that tee, they lose it emotionally for a little bit. How you play in that actual game environment. So I think you can learn a lot about a player's maturity and ability to be dependent on. But when it comes to physically, no, you're right. I mean, you can look fantastic. I think it's more about eyeballs to eyeballs on the sideline, how a guy's reacting to playing in front of 100,000 people for the first time than anything they do physically on the field. You give me that?
I'll give you that. That's fair. I mean, I've seen players who light it up in practice and just can't put it together in game time. I mean, they just panic. And the most obvious one is Nathan Peterman when he was at Tennessee.
Pretty good one. Okay. Over the weekend, the San Diego Chargers, this is pretty funny. And then we're going to talk about that Florida State game because I think it helps Tennessee. I know we started with that. Want to get Spencer on. What ball over the weekend, San Diego Chargers.
By the way, Los Angeles Chargers. You do know
Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sorry. Los Angeles Chargers. They were stuck in an elevator and eventually got out. They released a statement. They're okay. So it made me wonder, what ball would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with? So I'm going to put that as our poll question. Caleb, right now I have Josh Heupel and Nico. I think those are two really obvious ones, and we're going to see which ones that
we're going current.
Yeah, why not? That you would like to add. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. Okay, I'll let you, if you want to go former. Do you want to include Peyton? Dylan, I know it's not the St. Louis Rams and the Baltimore Colts. That's awful. I love the Cleveland Ravens, though.
I mean, Lance stole mine, and I'm sorry, but like Lance stole my answer. I mean, being stuck in an elevator with Candace Parker would be freaking awesome.
Okay, Candace Parker. Okay, all right. I hope Mrs. doesn't watch the show. Okay, and give me one more. All right, give me one more. So we got Josh Heupel, Nico, Candace Parker. You can be stuck in an elevator, LA Chargers style, with whom else?
Choice would be Johnny. Mine would be Johnny Majors.
Well, that would be difficult and uncomfortable because he's not with us. So let's
Okay.
Go ahead and go with somebody that's with us. You know who mine would be? Because I don't think Josh Heupel is going to really say anything, no matter how long we're stuck in an elevator. I feel like we could be stuck 3 years in an elevator and he wouldn't say anything. Goodness gracious. I see interviews with him and he still doesn't say anything. And there's nothing wrong with that. He doesn't want to give anything away. But I'm going to include Danny White because I think that he would like to crow.
Okay, then we got to throw Candace Parker out. We got to do current Vols because like you can't have like Candace Parker and then just a bunch of current Vols. Okay, because honestly.
Then you give me the third. I got Heupel, Nico, Danny White.
All right, Heupel, Nico, Danny White, and I will probably go. I'm gonna go Boo Carter. I think Boo Carter's a fun dude. I'd love to hang out with Boo Carter in an elevator.
Just kicking it with Boo Carter. Okay, well, he's probably a little bit younger and more immature. So if you want to pick Tennessee's best player, you might say Brew McCoy, but I've been around Brew at his golf tournament and he's just a regular dude. So yeah, it'd be fun to talk to him about ball, but I don't know that it really would be the most exciting of times. Oh man, Why didn't we put Tony Vitello in there? We should have done
This
that.
is why you have to. This is why you have to limit your options. You can't do like just Vols in general, former Vols, because it gets like. Because if you include former Vols, nobody with the current program is on this list outside of Tony Vitello.
Okay.
Nobody.
Well, I'm going with guys associated with a football team. So go ahead and vote now. And on our YouTube page, you can vote Josh Heupel, Nico, Boo Carter, Danny White. And they're all dead even right now. So we'll see who wins. I thought Boo Carter was a terrible selection, but maybe that'll pan out for Caleb. I'm just going to do this, Caleb. I'm going to reset today's tough question. No, actually, let's just do this. Let's talk Florida State right now. I believe that Florida State has done a couple of things when it comes to the college football playoff. And one is undermine any ACC argument that they should have 2 teams in. However, I'm still fearful that the college football playoff committee will try to force 2 in. We have taken, this has bothered me for a while, Caleb. We have taken kind of this leap of faith in that the college football playoff committee is going to take 3 SEC teams. They might take 4. Heck, they might take 5. But there's a part of me that thinks, especially after I looked at the representation and there was only 2 people out of 12 at any tie to the SEC, that they might try to force 2 Big 12 teams or ACC teams in. I think Saturday was a big day for the Vols because Florida State might have taken the ACC completely out of contention to get 2 teams in.
Florida State, I mean, I think this solidified it. I don't think they were going anyway. I know you think there was bias. There might have been bias towards the ACC. Dave, the majority of the committee was ACC members last year, and they kept out Florida State. One, the ACC committee hates Florida State with a burning passion. So, because they're trying to leave, and they hate Clemson too. I think that this solidified that fact. Florida State losing to Georgia Tech solidified there will not be 2 ACC teams in. There will be a minimum of 4 SEC teams in. Florida State is going. If Florida State doesn't win the Big 12, the ACC, they're not going. If Florida State wins out and beats Clemson, Dave, Clemson could go 12-1 or 13-1. The committee's going to be like, yeah, but you lost to Georgia Tech. But you lost to Florida State, who lost to Georgia Tech. So I think this solidifies the fact that there will, unless Georgia Tech all of a sudden runs the table and goes 12-0, not happening. They're playing Georgia. But unless that happens, there is no way they would look at the ACC and put 2 teams in. On top of that, the SEC now has that exclusive deal with ESPN. Guys, y'all can think this all day, and you're just going to be thinking wrong. The SEC is not going to be treated unfairly in the playoff. Ever. They're going to be treated more fairly than they should be, if anything.
Wait, who thinks that?
People
Nobody.
are like,
I think you can get too deep on, not you personally, but I think people can get too deep on message boards. I think for the most part, people believe that the SEC will get preferential treatment, not only because of the tie with ESPN, but because it's just a better product top to bottom. I mean, and that goes with last year's SEC, this year's SEC. You just can't stack up Big Ten teams and SEC teams and tell me that there's a comparison if you want to go number 1 to the last team in the conference.
No, you can't. You can't. And that's what I mean. The SEC is going to get the fair treatment, and they're going to deserve the fair treatment, the preferential treatment. I mean, I've said this for a while. SEC bias is real. It's also earned. Okay, so that's why last year the committee said, I'll take a 1-loss Alabama over an undefeated Florida State any day of the week. And I think that you're going to see more of that this year. This solidifies that. There will not be more than 2 ACC teams. There will not be more than 1 ACC team. Excuse me. There will definitely not be more than 1 Big 12 team, given the fact that the best team in the Big 12 might be Arizona or Kansas State or Utah.
I know.
And
I just don't trust these people. That's why I want just a very simple, no bones about it. This is not hard. This is a formula that we all play by, and it doesn't include scoring differential. That's the one thing I don't want to see running up the score, and that was a part of it for a short time.
But Dave, I get that you don't trust this committee, but if you trust them if you fear that they will make a poor decision, they would make a poor decision in favor of the SEC before they made it against the SEC because of the SEC's ties to the college football playoff and ESPN.
Okay, but here's how distrusting I am of the committee. Okay. And I think that ESPN will ultimately have enough of a say where they will be able to affect what goes on. But there's no way in creation that Tennessee, who beat Alabama in 2022, should have been behind them. That just doesn't make sense to me. That's simple. It's on the field. So I don't trust anything they do. Nothing. And maybe it's not contrived. Maybe it's just stupid. But, I mean, I think you've got to eliminate all factors because you and I think there are going to be 4 SEC teams in.
No, there's going to be 5. I think there's going to be 5.
You think there'll be 5? We think that. I don't know that until I see it. So I think every time, and we're gonna track teams throughout the week, and we're gonna tell you every Thursday or Friday and a new feature who to watch. Because nowadays, Caleb, there are teams to root against, which I am gonna point the finger at you. You said that this would make the regular season less interesting. I believe firmly it makes the regular season more interesting because you're going to see teams play themselves out of it. And Georgia Tech has played themselves into the conversation. They're not going to go undefeated. We know that, but they're going to cause some trouble in the ACC. I wonder if you've changed your tune at all because FSU losing had an impact on a lot of teams.
No, I haven't changed my tune. And I'll tell you guys exactly why I haven't changed my tune. It has increased the value of the regular season for games and teams like ACC teams and mid-level Big Ten teams. For the SEC powers, it doesn't matter. They still know go 10-2, you're in. Go 9-3, you're cussed. Go 8-4, you're out. That is the rule with the SEC. So it's still the problem to me that you can lose 2 regular season games and be in. I have a problem with the fact that Alabama, LSU carries 0 weight this year. I don't care about Florida State, Georgia Tech impacting that. I care about the fact that when Alabama plays LSU, it used to be, oh my gosh, the team that loses, everything is on the line. Now they're like, we can lose. We'll be all right.
Well, but see, I don't think a team can lose a second game and feel like they still have a shot. Now they do, and there are going to be some 10-2. Well, yeah, there are going to be some 10-2 teams that make it, but you're also throwing yourself in a mix where the committee could vote against you and you don't get in. Derek pretty much sums it up. He said, that's right, Dave. They hosed us for that. It lets you know the cook job. I bet they knew Saban was close to retiring. I don't know if they knew Saban was close to retiring, but that bizarro Alabama ahead of Tennessee in 2022 basically took away all faith that I have in the college football playoff committee.
But Dave, they'll keep Tennessee behind another SEC team. You're right. They may screw Tennessee in that way. They're not going to keep Tennessee behind another non-SEC team. The preferential treatment is always going to the SEC team over a non-SEC team in this playoff format. 100% of the time. They're not.
I sincerely hope you're right. And I think you're right. But it's kind of like, it's kind of like a deal with the devil. I mean, ultimately, or a dumb devil. I don't trust the dumb person to do things the correct way.
If they don't do it the correct way, it'll be incorrect in favor of the SEC, not the other way around. The SEC is going to get their break every time. I mean, that in this way. I mean, and now again, 15 years ago, different story. But nowadays, the preferential treatment will be in favor of the SEC most of the time, within reason. Not because I would do something that I think is unreasonable, but not that I think is unreasonable, that the national media would think is unreasonable, which is I would say, I think there's an argument that all but one wild card team should come from the SEC this year. I think the SEC should get 6 teams in, and the Big Ten 3, and everybody else 1. I mean, I think maybe you could put 2. I don't even know if there's 2 wild card Big Ten teams this year. Now, in year to year, that's going to change, Dave. But I think the Big Ten is very down this year. I think Ohio State's massively overrated. Michigan's rebuilding. So I think the Big Ten is very down this year. And the SEC may be the deepest it's ever been this year alone.
Do this for me. Tease this day in Tennessee sports history, which is coming up. And it's brought to you in part by our good friends at Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been in the Chattanooga community and serving them since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online, qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave and Off the Hook Sports said hello. I will have an update on that poll question. Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with? And also, we will have this day in Tennessee sports history. I'll remind you, this is the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, this day in Tennessee sports history, and we're getting into football season, so we'll be able to talk some ball as it is game week. Please hit like and subscribe and turn those notifications on because we've got some special things coming down the pike we're looking forward to. Caleb, what do you got for this day in Tennessee sports history?
Well, I mean, it's another birthday, but it's a birthday that's valuable because on this day, 45 years ago, the man responsible for completing arguably the greatest backfield in college football history was born. Jamal Lewis was born 45 years ago today. And if Tennessee starts him from the start of the year, maybe Peyton Manning wins the Heisman. Who knows?
45 years. That's hard to believe. Where does he rank in your mind among the top tailbacks talent-wise? Purely talent-wise, not a yardage standpoint.
I got two that are the top purely talent-wise, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but one I only saw highlights of, but those highlights were just insane. So Jamal Lewis and Chuck Webb.
Those are mine too. I got no argument.
Where would Chuck Webb be if he didn't get hurt?
Oh, man, if he were born 10 years later, I mean, the medical advancements improved so much. Back when you heard torn ACL, I went to that game that Chuck Webb got hurt at. And
the Pacific game?
Hurt in, yes. And I remember driving away from it. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but, guys, they can tell 90% of the time if an ACL is torn. In other words, the preliminary, when they move your leg, they pretty much know. Now, they can miss it on the other side. You can have a torn ACL, and it's not that pliable, so they're not sure. But they knew, and this would not happen nowadays, but they said it on the post game that he was lost for the year. And I still remember that and thinking, man, Tennessee just lost one of the most special players I've ever seen. And it was just such a routine play, too. In 2 minutes, coming up on the program, we are going to have SEC power rankings. Where are the Vols? It is game week. Hit like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell. Turn that notification on. Also, we're going to talk some recruiting stat of the day as well. And we'll update you with that poll question that's online. And that's exactly what Vol would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with? It is Danny White, Nico, Josh Heupel, or Boo Carter. 2 minutes. Stay tuned.
35th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2023 Ford Expedition Limited 4x4 $67,950, 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950, 2023 Ford Escape ST Line $28,940. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
Last I checked, we got about 5 million viewers on YouTube. And
they just have very filthy minds. How dare they?
Oh, no. I don't want to go there. But we do want you in the chat. And we're going to address that poll question, which I'm particularly proud of. But we got 5 million people on the YouTube, and you haven't hit the like button yet. So do that for me. Hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that. The show represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksandjones.com. All right, so I've got an announcement coming up tomorrow. I will be doing a book sign with the Celebrate 98 team, so I'm excited about that. Also want to be sure and thank our good friends at Sports Treasures. You can pick the book up there. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best in sports memorabilia. They have daily updates. So I'm going to share the QR code with you now so that you can follow Sports Treasures on Facebook. You need to do that. They had a Chris Brazzell signing on Sunday. He's going to be a superstar. I'll go ahead and tell you that. He's going to be really, really good. And it's also part of Hooker's Corner, which you can join. We had somebody over the weekend that actually said this. So where can I get more Caleb? And I tweeted back. I said, well, you can just join Hooker's Corner. Boom, he did so within 15 minutes. So you get recruiting. I'm serious. I'm not exaggerating. You can look at my Twitter feed. Caleb's laughing. You do that.
No, I'm sorry. I'm reading the message board. I am loving this conversation on the message board, guys.
Okay, I'm not looking at it so I don't get thrown off. All right, so you've got the QR code. You can join Hooker's Corner. Fantastic recruiting coverage, prizes, including this orange mini helmet with the white stripe signed by Joe Milton. That's pretty awesome. We'll be giving that away on Friday. That's our monthly prize for August. For some reason, it seems like September, but it's not quite there yet. And that's all a part of Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge. And it is awesome because you can win great prizes. I know that. And one happens to be a Garmin watch. So it's not the Flavor Flav style with the big one in the middle. It's like an awesome Garmin watch that will connect to your phone. Given away to one lucky listener. You can be a free member of Off the Hook Sports. Just go ahead and sign up, subscribe to this channel, and then we'll have a drawing once we hit 8,000 subscribers, approaching 6,000. So we've set the bar high, and we believe we can do that because of you. So please hit that like button and join Hooker's Corner for free, or if you want to be eligible for that Joe Milton helmet, I join as a paid member. But Rick Terry Jewelry Design, featuring just an awesome Garmin watch worth over $1,000 that we're going to give away. And they have the awesome Fire Opals as well, which is a fantastic Tennessee tradition, very affordable, and you will absolutely love the selection that you get right there at Rick Terry. Go to rickterryjewelry.com. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. So, Caleb, you want to give us an update on our poll question on the YouTuber, if you don't mind?
Sure, that's not a problem at all. I can pull that up now.
By the way, while you're doing that, I'll put the QR code back up for Hooker's Corner if anybody wants to join. So go ahead and give us that. What do we got?
Okay, so on our poll question, sorry, I have to get back in real quick. I had an issue with my YouTube, but the question was, who would you most rather be stuck on an elevator with? And we named Josh Heupel, Nico Iamaleava, Danny White, and Boo Carter. And guys, this was football related. That's why we didn't put it on Kim Caldwell, you degenerates, you heathens. So
maybe we should reset it.
But Josh Heupel's at 40%, Nico's at 26%, Danny White 24%, Boo Carter at 9%. I'm sorry, Dave, but I don't always send out shout outs to the best but I gotta send out a shout out to like the best like back and forth possible, which is someone said we didn't put Kim Caldwell on the list because we knew she would dominate. And then Travis decides to respond, Kim Caldwell dominating for the win.
She's not a bad looking lady. So what if the poll question was, did we want to reset this in an elevator with Candace Parker or Kim Caldwell?
No, we're not doing that, guys.
I like the idea of that. TriStar hats for the latest in TriStar hats. Go to the original hats, apparel, and more. TriStarHatsCo.com. TriStarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOKED and get 10% off. That's right. Use the promo code HOOKED and get 10% off. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There's your QR code. So you can go ahead and own some awesome. It's right over my shoulder too. If you can see the hat, Caleb, you see that? I love the patriotic hat. Obviously, the orange ones are pretty darn nice too. So it's time for 4 downs as we're going to dive into a topic that's been a topic of conversation. I use the word topic twice, 3 times now, between me and Jimmy Himes for quite some time, including at SEC Media Days. He wrote a great column about it. So here we go. 4 downs is now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. So let's take a look at Tennessee's, and we may go longer than 4 downs here, to be real honest with you, but let's take a look at Tennessee's offense in particular. That's where we're going to primarily focus because that's what Jimmy wrote about. So there has been this contention that Josh Heupel has shared that, and he keeps repeating it, which really just may not be the smartest thing to do from a PR standpoint because it raises expectations. But he said this is the deepest roster that he's had at Tennessee. This is not part of 4 downs, but let me just ask you, first of all, do you agree with that, Caleb?
I fully agree with Josh Heupel. It absolutely is.
Okay. Now, I agree with that too. Jimmy does not agree with us. Now, normally we would have him on as we do every Wednesday to discuss that, but he's at the U.S. Open. So, Cooper, what should we do? Oh, we shouldn't do that. Cooper, what should we do before we get to 4 downs?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. First down.
Coop here. First down.
All right. We're going to talk quarterbacks, but let's focus on the offensive line first. Would you take the offensive line of Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell, Lance Hurd, Jackson Lampley, or Andre Keurig over top 10 NFL pick Darnell Wright, Jerome Carbon, J.J. Crawford, Gerald Mincey, Mays, and Spraggins?
Jimmy has a point.
We're comparing basically, you'll see, we're comparing basically to this the 2022 team, which would have easily made the playoffs.
Yes. And Jimmy, it's fair to say, has a great point. I wouldn't do that at all.
Okay. I agree with him on that point. We're not addressing depth, and he didn't address depth in this particular column, but I will tell you that I think Tennessee had more average depth. I'm still concerned about their depth this year. All right, second down.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, would you take the tight end room of Ethan Davis, Miles Kitselman, and Holden Stays over Princeton Fant, who accounted for 9 touchdowns, and Jacob Warren? Jimmy said he would not. Would you?
I actually would. It's because of the Ethan Davis thing, and this is and again I get Jimmy's point. I can't say I take Kitselman over Jacob Warren, but
yes, you would.
I think Ethan. You think I would?
Spoke somebody over the weekend. You would. Miles Kitselman is going to be the player we've talked least about that's going to have the biggest impact on this program. Don't be surprised if they run some double tights down on the goal line, which they don't do. Don't be surprised if he makes a clutch play or two. You're going to have to trust me on this one. You would take these 3 over those 2. No offense to Jacob Warren or Princeton Fant. You know we love Jacob Warren.
Yeah.
You need to be with me on this one.
I'm okay. I'm with you. I'm diving all in on. See, blocking tight ends to me for this offense are more about understanding schemes and things like that. Whereas Ethan Davis, like the stretch the field tight end, that's more about raw athletic ability. And Ethan Davis beats Princeton Fant in raw athletic ability by a wide margin.
Somebody recently told me Tennessee went after Miles Kitselman thinking he was the blocking tight end. And as it turns out, he is a much better receiver downfield than they even dreamed. So, I mean, that's with camp wrapping up. So don't be surprised with Ethan Davis, just a sophomore, if Miles Kitselman ends up being the guy with the most receptions at the end of the year. How crazy is that? Is that crazy?
That's wild.
That's
crazy.
That's crazy.
Like that is total bullshit.
No, it's not.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Would you take Squirrel White, Chris Brazel, Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton over Biletnikoff winner Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Ramel Keaton, and McCoy? Now, let's remember this is entering the season. We don't know that Cedric Tillman would suffer an injury in 2022.
Yeah. I think roughly the same, honestly. I think roughly the same.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. I was going to say that was about a wash. So, yeah, I'll say that they're about the same.
I mean, I'll say this. I'm going to say this much because Chris Brazel's playing the Ramel Keaton role. Chris Brazel's better than Ramel Keaton in that same role. I mean, and that's all due respect to Ramel Keaton. I have a lot of respect for Ramel Keaton. I love him. I think he gave his all for Tennessee, but Dave, I think Chris Brazel's better, don't you?
Yes, and you changed my mind. I would take this receiver group heading into the season over that receiver group.
There you go. The only reason I'm hesitant is because I don't know if Squirrel White's on Jalen Hyatt's level on the slot, but Chris Brazel's above Ramel Keaton.
You also have a Dante Thornton who will play on the outside, and we discussed with him personally that he's more comfortable there, and that's probably where he should play from the get. What down are we at, Caleb? We have fourth down yet?
Fourth down.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Okay. This is a tough one. Would you take Dylan Sampson, Cam Selden, Peyton Lewis, and Deshaun Bishop over Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson?
No, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. So it's tough for me to make an argument against Jimmy on that. So I'm with Jimmy completely there. Now is where it gets really tough. Would you take Heisman Trophy candidate Hendon Hooker, NFL draft pick Joe Milton, and Gaston Moore over Nico, Gaston Moore, and Jake Merklinger? And I put them in that order specifically because I don't think Merklinger is ready yet. As far as the room, who would you take?
No. And I get Jimmy's point, but no, I'm taking Nico. I have been high on Nico from the start. Okay. I don't care what Hendon Hooker did for Tennessee in 2022. I am higher on Nico now. Okay. I am getting it. this is like assuming that Deshaun Watson can't be better than Taj Boyd when everybody knew he was going to be better than Taj Boyd. And that's the situation Nico is in. I am doubling down. I'm tripling down. I'm quadrupling down. What is it? The Christmas story? I triple dog dare you. I triple dog dare me to put all my money on Nico being better than Hendon Hooker. And that is with all due respect to Hendon Hooker, who, by the way, might be starting this year for the Lions with what he's played in preseason. But yes, I am taking Nico Iamaleava.
Okay, I'm going to tell you who I would take, and it's brought to you by Medicare Misty. Wherever you're watching, she's licensed in over 40 states, so she can take care of your Medicare needs for no cost. Which group I would take? 30 seconds.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Tell you what, I'm taking this year's group because I think Nico is better than Hendon Hooker. And in either situation, if you have to go to the backup, Caleb, I don't think you're playing for a championship. And somebody kind of called me out because I said that Gaston Moore on our YouTube channel, which I check all the comments, guys. Somebody called me out over the weekend and said, come on, you think Gaston Moore could be a 10-win quarterback at Tennessee if he was the starter this season? And I had to back off that a little bit. Now that I think about it, I think that Tennessee is an 8 or 9 win team with Gaston Moore if he were the starter today. I think they're a 10 and possible championship team with Nico. Is that fair? And I'm curious if you agree or disagree with that.
No, I think that's fair to put it that way. That's what I think too. But for people who say, because we're comparing the whole room, I mean, David, Joe Milton played the whole season in 2022. I think the drop off from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton would even be worse than from Nico Iamaleava to Gaston Moore this year. And I think Nico's better than Hendon. So that's another reason this quarterback room is better. Like, David, Tennessee has Joe Milton in 2022 starting the whole season. They ain't beating Alabama. And they're probably not beating Pittsburgh.
Fair enough. We'll take a look at the defense tomorrow. We certainly appreciate what Jimmy brings to both the website and the program, and hope he's enjoying the U.S. Open. His appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton.
When the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 24 Ford Maverick Hybrid, 25,515. 23 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,995. 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $59,757. Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, so we'll tackle that defense, but you can read the column on offthehooksports.com. Now we'll get to the SEC power ratings, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you.
Before that,
yes,
because we just did a whole thing on the offense and the breakdown, yes. We need a verdict. Verdict is out. Is the offense better or worse than it has been in previous years under Josh Heupel?
I think it's better. I think it's an injury or two away. I don't believe him that it's as deep as he wants us to believe. And I don't know why he's saying that, but I think an injury or two on the offensive line is very disconcerting. I think that because you have a first-time starter, and I'm sorry, Iowa. They're not Alabama. They're not Florida. The pressure that comes with it, they're not Georgia. We all know that. But when I look at this offense, I think at the end of the day, they won't have to produce as many points. So statistically, maybe they won't be as good, but they will look more dominant and better, especially from the get, because I think the schedule helps them out to work in a young quarterback. I think that everything has been set up for this year. And Chris Lowe of ESPN said this recently on a media appearance he made, that he thinks Josh Heupel has been leading up to this year. And I don't know when the schedule was made exactly, Caleb, but I think it's really nice to have two okay opponents to start the season and get your new quarterback up to speed if he needs to get up to speed.
So Chris Lowe said what I said 2 years ago. Where has everybody been? I've been saying he's been building up for 2024 since the middle of 2022, in case anybody hasn't noticed. And so I agree. The offense is better. The offense is better. I'll just tease this. A lot of Jimmy Hyatt. We love Jimmy sometimes, and I do this too. When we're all trying to make an argument, we don't. Here's what we do as columnists when we try to make an argument. We don't put inaccurate facts in there, but we put incomplete facts in there. And it's a little incomplete to break down the offensive side when the clear difference for Tennessee on why they're better this year will be on the defense, which we'll talk about.
Yes, which we will address tomorrow. And I'll go ahead and tell you that Tennessee is going to get a lot more yay votes. They are better than we expected, or they're better than they were in 2022 heading into the season. I don't see how that could be up for argument, really, Caleb. I mean, they've had an opportunity to build on that side of the ball. So let's get to SEC Power Rankings now, which will be on offthehooksports.com. And Caleb, do you want to start from the bottom, or where would you like to begin here? Because I know everybody wants to hear where Tennessee is going to end up. So Caleb is objective, so we'll see. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm opening it as we speak. So let's start from the bottom, and let me get your thoughts.
Yes, we're starting from the bottom, and let me be very clear on how I do my power rankings, guys. These are not my projections. These are not my projections at all. These are based on only what I've seen to this point, who I would favor in a matchup if I were running a sports book in Vegas.
Okay.
So, number 16, I don't think anybody has to guess who it is. There's two newcomers in the SEC. And the worst team in the SEC is still the worst team in the SEC. And it's
Vanderbilt.
As always. Yes, Vanderbilt.
Okay. All right. Who's 15?
15. Now, there's a collection of teams that I think are all kind of bad. But I've actually got South Carolina at number 15. Now, South Carolina actually played a little bit better in November last year than they have in years past. And so they finished 5-7. But then they lost Spencer Rattler. So they were already kind of a bad team. And now the bottom's falling out. I got to see a lot more before I believe they're going to be good.
Don't have an argument with that. I can completely roll with that. I don't think South Carolina is very good. And at some point, their players are going to see through the facade of Shane Beamer, and they're going to quit this year. I think they could be I think they could have a 3-win season, 3 or 4-win season. Who else?
Yep. And so now number 14, and y'all know I'm much higher. They will finish, I think, in the top 8, but as of right, maybe top 10. But as of right now, Mississippi State is number 14 in the SEC Power Rankings. They were 5-7. They changed head coaches. I'm projecting Jeff Lebby to be good, but I can't sit there and definitively say that as of right now they're that.
No. All right, keep rolling. Who's next?
Number 13 is Arkansas, 5-7. Again, can't definitively say they're any better. They're actually going to be worse in my opinion, but I can't definitively say they're worse because they were just 5-7 and brought in Bobby Petrino. And sticking with the bad teams that were losing records last year, Florida is at number 12. You can maybe make the case of Arkansas over Florida. I think going into right now, I think you say Florida's a little bit better. I think Vegas would favor Florida over Arkansas on a neutral site right now.
Okay.
So who's Florida number 12?
All right. Florida 12 is an absolute embarrassment to that program. And I'm celebrated Tennessee fans because they are going through what you went through in the last decade because it's bad all the way at the top, according to my Florida sources. It's not just Billy Napier.
Yeah, my understanding, and that's what I read a little bit more about it over the weekend. Florida is there's not light at the end of the tunnel for Florida.
And let's not forget, I mean, if you're Caleb's age, you probably always think of Florida being incredible. Well, my age too. You always think of Florida being really good because they started getting good when Steve Spurrier got there in the early 90s. But I'm sorry. Before then, they were considered the sleeping giant and a joke of a program for the 80s. All right, who's next?
All right, So number 11 is Kentucky. Kentucky never moves from that like mid to lower tier SEC power ranking spot. They stay in that in perpetuity. Basically.
I think Kentucky, I would have Kentucky higher. I think Kentucky's the best team that can't make the college football playoff.
Here's why I don't have them higher. And this is not a projection. This is based on the talent already there. But you can't put them above Texas A&M. Texas A&M has more talent and went 7-5 last year. Now they have a new head coach. I'm projecting Texas A&M to finish top 5. But even without the projection, I got to have them above Kentucky at number 10.
Okay. Who's next?
Number 9, Auburn. I mean, Hugh Freeze and the Tigers are red hot on the recruiting trail. They had a terrible finish to last season, but they're still, I think, in the right position. So you had to put them at number 9 in power rankings. Now, maybe because of the way they finished, you could put Kentucky ahead of them. I could give you that for right now.
Yep.
But
Pastor Freeze is going to win some games there. Who's
well,
next?
I mean, and also, I mean, and when you rank players like
Pastor Hugh, actually,
Hugh Freeze has God on his team, and that's the best player possible. So, you know,
over under coaches in the SEC that referred to him as Pastor Hugh during that time, in like without me bringing it up, that I would talk to.
I'll say
over unders 5.5. That would bring it up on their own.
I'll go over. I'll go over.
Over. It was just it was like everybody. They didn't go Hugh who. They knew exactly who you were talking about. All right, who's next?
So after Auburn is at number 8 is Oklahoma. Brent Venables went 10-3 at Oklahoma. We have a lot of reasons to be. We're now with the teams that actually expect to make the college football playoff this year. By the way, okay. Brent Venables went 10-3 last year. Has Jackson Arnold, expects to maintain the momentum. You and I both think the bottom's going to fall out, but that's projections, not evidence, not like hard evidence based. And hard evidence based as of right now is Oklahoma is a top 8 team in the SEC as of right now.
Completely agree. I think they'll be about 12 at the end of the year, and I believe you concur.
I do.
Who's next?
Next, number 7 is Tennessee. Tennessee is number 7 right now. Now, some people will come at me with
bullshit.
Hear me out. Some people will come at me with somebody like Missouri. But guys, you can't put Tennessee above Missouri in your SEC power rankings right now, even if you think they'll be better.
Because you're not projecting.
I'm not projecting. I'm where they are right now. Missouri was 11-2. Tennessee was 9-4. Missouri beat the brakes off Tennessee last year, and Missouri returns everybody. There's no way I can theoretically put Tennessee ahead of Missouri right now.
Right.
In my power rankings.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. I think the two factors that would put Tennessee, that will elevate Tennessee wherever they're going to come in, will be defensive play and quarterback play as good or better than 2022. And I think they'll end up at 2. But anyway, that's where they are now, and that's fair. Who's next?
Next is Missouri is number 6. I have Missouri at number 6. I do think while their 11-2 record made them clear-cut better in the power rankings than Tennessee is of right now, it still was a little iffy because they did cash in on a very easy schedule last year. So, and I think you and I both agree, Dave. You throw New Year's 6 bowl wins out the window if it's not a playoff game, right? Like Ohio State didn't care about that game.
Yep. All right. Who's next?
Number 5 is LSU. I know they just lost their Heisman winner, but all the hype is behind Garrett Nussmeier. They actually beat Missouri last year. There's no reason to see that they'll have a drop off offensively. Defensively is a question, but I'm still high on LSU at number 5. I think they'll be better by the end of the year than number 5. But as of right now, you have to put them at number 5.
All right. By the way, you're getting called out to just extensively on the message board that seventh is too low.
Sorry.
Okay. I want to
ask
you.
Don't care about your feelings.
I want to ask you about the end of this where you project them. Now, but let's continue. Who's next?
All right, so
Caleb's not a traitor. These aren't projections.
These aren't projections, guys. These are power rankings.
Travis is trolling us. Go ahead. All
right, so number 4 is Ole Miss. And again, Dave, I didn't know what to do with Ole Miss because this is the most, they're unpredictable, but at the end of the day, they were 11-2 last year, and they returned their quarterback. That is the guy at the height of what Lane Kiffin was doing. So you got to have the number 4 right now.
Would you agree or disagree with this statement? Ole Miss could be 1 or 8.
Ole Miss could be 1 or 4.
Sorry. I didn't mean to play that. What were you going to say?
Ole Miss could be 1 or 14.
That's hot.
I don't know if it can be that bad. I guess.
Like, okay, put it this way. When like sometimes when there's outsider candidates running for office in politics, sometimes you vote for them. You're like, because they could be the greatest leader of all time, or they could be absolutely crazy, and you don't know what you're getting. I mean, that's Ole Miss this year, right? Or a home run hire as a head coach. Who is Deion Sanders? Ole Miss is Deion Sanders this year. You don't know what you're getting.
I think I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting from Deion Sanders, and that was an awful lot of hype. I do think you would agree that Lane Kiffin is a much better coach than Deion Sanders, though, right?
I would take Lane Kiffin as a coach over Deion Sanders all day, every day, but I might take Lane Kiffin over Josh Heupel as a coach, just as a play caller, as a X's and O's guy. I might take Lane Kiffin over anybody.
Interesting. As a head coach and a manager of a program, I don't think there's any comparison, having covered them both. Asia Cafe won a Hooks Hangouts, and we would love for you to stop by there. Go to asiacafe.org. We'll have the top of this list in just one momento. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine. I had it last night. It was fantastic. The Szechuan shrimp, handcrafted from Guarded family recipes. Also, they have the fantastic Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee. It's the 6-to-1 Brazilian cocoa. What does that mean? It means it gives you great, consistent energy throughout the day. It tastes unbelievable. It's been around since 1909 and available at any of those Asia Cafe locations. Check out the one in Calhoun. That's my go-to, Asia Cafe, right there, asiacafe.org. Who's next?
All right, so number 3, and this is going to be very controversial because they won the SEC last year and they beat Georgia last year, and these are supposed to be about what you've done, not projections. But I still have Alabama number 3. And the reason I have Alabama number 3 is because, honestly, Dave, even after Alabama beat Georgia last year in the SEC title, I still would have had them below Georgia in my SEC power rankings. And
that's crazy.
I think
would you?
I watched that game. Georgia was better. And
well, let's go back. Would you have Alabama ahead of Tennessee in 2022?
No. Tennessee was better than Alabama in that game, clearly. Bryce Young was the only neutralizer, honestly. No, Georgia was absolutely better. Again, these are not rankings. These are power rankings. These are, if these two teams played on a neutral field right now, who would I favor based on what I've seen to this point if I were running a sports book? And if I'm running a sports book, Dave, if Alabama and Georgia play on a neutral field right now, who are you favoring?
Georgia.
Not even a question, right?
Right.
So, yeah, because of that, I got to put Alabama at number 3 because this isn't based on projections. This is based on what I've seen, and Alabama's down at number 3 right now. That loss to Michigan does stand out. They went through a coaching change. There's a lot. I don't believe in Jalen Miller with Kalen DeBoer. That's projection, yes, but the key of a coaching change combined with the way they ended last year puts them at number 3.
Okay. All right. Who's next?
Number 2, and again, projections, I think they're going to finish in the 8 to 10 range in the SEC, but based on what I've seen so far, I'm putting Texas at number 2.
Texas?
I would favor Texas over Alabama on a neutral site right now if I were running a sports book. I'm sorry, I'd favor Texas over Alabama. Yeah, I'd favor Texas over Alabama on a neutral site.
No, you said it right the first time. But that's a tough one for me. I just feel like I've got to see more. I mean, God bless you for doing the preseason one because I feel like I've got to see more. I've got to see week 1, but I'll roll with that. And I'm assuming Georgia is number 1, right?
Georgia's number 1. Now, by the way, one of the things I have to take into account, and Dave, you're going to know this, my power rankings and my regular rankings go way out of whack with the first few games of the year because I just based it off this year. So, like, I want to do a top 10 at the end of every week, and my top 10 is not going to be who I think the top 10 teams are in college football. It's going to be just straight up based on like what we've seen to this point in the season.
Just for the record, I want to give Caleb some credit. He's doing the work that AP voters should do, but the lion's share of them just fill it out on a Sunday morning and take about 15 minutes. What he's doing is what AP voters should do. So let me ask you this. As far as conference opponents that are on Tennessee's schedule, other than Georgia, who should Tennessee fans be most concerned about based off your power ratings?
Well, I mean, Alabama.
Of course. Who else?
Why do you guys think I'm so high on Tennessee this year?
Okay, we're just talking about concern. We're not asking you to pick them. We think you think Tennessee's going to win. Florida?
No.
Okay, we'll get. Surely you got 4. Do you may go non-conference?
No, there is only 3 conference games on Tennessee's schedule that are worth their salt. Okay, and that is Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia. Dave. Okay, let's go down the list. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. 5 of the 6 bottom teams in my SEC power rankings, Tennessee plays. 5 of their 8 non-conference games are against the bottom 6 teams in my SEC power rankings. They get a very favorable schedule this year, guys.
New poll question that is up now, and that is, who are you most concerned about other than Georgia on Tennessee's football schedule? I got Florida, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. So it's just up now. Votes coming in. We will address momentarily. He's
and guys, let me stress, because people are getting mad talking about Texas. This is based on what's happened. Because there has not been a game this season yet, okay? How can I put Tennessee above Texas right now? Because I'm not projecting anything for this season so far.
Okay, let me ask you this. Who makes the most volatile positive move and the most volatile negative move in your power rankings by the end of the year? I'll ask you that question in exactly 2 minutes. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
And the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 24 Ford Maverick Hybrid, $25,515. 23 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,995. 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $59,757. Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win. ThanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, so Caleb, we shared his power rankings. Check out offthehooksports.com. You can read those. And Caleb, let me ask you this, which I teased before the break. Which team, based off your power rankings, is the most volatile from a positive standpoint? In other words, move up the most.
Well, and you guys can track this because last week with Dave, I predicted the SEC standings for the 2024 season and where teams would finish.
Okay.
And the most, just based on that, the most volatile would actually end up being, from a positive perspective, that is, would end up being Texas A&M. And yeah, it would end up being Texas A&M because Texas A&M I've got finishing 4th in the SEC this year, and I've got them 10th in my power rankings.
I feel like I'll have a really good feel for A&M within one game because remember me telling you that I thought Michigan would win a national championship in September. It's because I thought they were just so physically gifted. Now, A&M has stiffer competition in the SEC, but do the guys that they recruited and paid so much money for under Jimbo Fisher, are they really that talented, or was he working the recruiting machine and has lost a lot to the transfer portal? In other words, I'm unsure about their roster. Now, who would make the biggest move from a negative standpoint?
Yeah, so this one to me is pretty simple, which is Texas. Texas is going to finish 8th, I think, in the SEC, and I've got them 2nd in my power rankings right now. I just don't see how they I think they're massively overrated. And I think Steve Sarkisian is massively overrated. Guys, our football IQ segment is coming back this year, and you guys forget this, but Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian in their head-to-head matchup, they just out-football IQ'd each other in their like basic in-game mistakes of not using their heads. But the only reason Kalen DeBoer won was because Steve Sarkisian was able to do worse football IQ than even Kalen DeBoer in that game.
Can't argue with that. Who's other than Kirby Smart, which I could debate not Kirby Smart, which coach would you want to enter this season with the most? Because you could argue against Kirby Smart because of discipline. And that brings us very aptly when we're talking about cars and discipline in Athens, Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
So who would you take as a coach headed into the season?
Well, I don't want to sound – I want to eliminate Josh Heupel because I cover him so much, because I don't want to sound like too Homer media-ish to say Josh Heupel, because I think I would take Josh Heupel, quite honestly. It's hard for me to pick anybody else based on what I know. So with Josh Heupel out of the picture, I mean, Brian Kelly's really fallen in my book because of the way he's mismanaged that defense, coaching that defense. I mean, he's fallen significantly to me.
Okay, and can I get a like from all of those that have said Caleb's last name should be spelled Calheaux because he thought a lot of LSU. I did too. I just didn't have a clever name to adhere to it. So, yeah, let's go ahead. And Caleb's taking a step back on LSU, and I have too. So I'm back.
Mainly Brian Kelly. He's not who I thought he was. Honestly, I thought he knew defense. Honestly. And he didn't, and he's mismanaged that defensive roster. He would have had a national championship last year if he didn't mismanage the defensive side of the ball. And that's a major knock against him because he cut his teeth as defensive coordinator. So with Brian Kelly out of the picture, Dave, I think I might say Mike Elko. And he's a first-year head coach. I love this guy. This is a guy I want coaching my football program.
I like Mike Elko a lot. But I'm going to say Kirby Smart because I think that he would we're going to talk. He doesn't have the roster he has now. Let's just say he's your coach for that team. I don't think he's, as a coach, going to lose you games. Does that make sense? I think he's so fundamentally sound that even if you had South Carolina's roster, you could probably win 7 or 8 games because you're not going to lose games you shouldn't lose. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot. If you look at Kirby Smart's record, great teams are the ones that have beaten him, right?
Yes. Mainly just Alabama.
So do we sell Kirby Smart short because he is such a great recruiter and known as that? I mean, I have no problem with back in the day winning games conservatively just because it's more exciting. Josh Heupel's way, no fan would complain if there was a conservative coach that got Tennessee to an undefeated season in the national championship, right?
No, and as a matter of fact, most of the time, the conservative play with more talent is still what wins. I mean, I don't want to say conservative because, like, the more traditional pro style, like this idea, and Nick Saban used to get mad about this. I think sometimes, Dave, we mix up, like, we see a coach who wins with overwhelming talent on defense and running a pro style, and we just automatically think they run ball control, but they don't. You know what I mean? And Georgia doesn't run ball control. If you guys ever watch them.
Oh, very true. All right. Stat of the day. Caleb, let's get to the stat of the day. And it's brought to you today by our fantastic friends that I've mentioned to you before, but I'm going to do so again. Apex Apparel Group Design. Look at my shirt and how awesome it looks. Apex Apparel Group Design, 15% off your first order if you call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. 3001. Stat of the day, Caleb, what do you got, sir?
Yes, it is August the 26th, and I just felt like sending a major shout out to one of the most legendary 26s to ever play for Tennessee. And that is a guy by the name.
I can't even think of a single 26 that's played for Tennessee right off the top of my head. Can anybody else? Let's give everybody 30 seconds to see if you can come up with a 26 that played for Tennessee.
Y'all figure it out.
Okay.
30 seconds?
All right, you got just 30 seconds, and that's it. As I remind you, the show is represented by Banks and Jones. 26. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. I'm the worst person to ask. I don't know jersey numbers. I know the way players move and I can identify players. That's why I never held a roster in practice. So I'm the worst to ask for this. 26. Who wore 26? Willie Gault?
Yes, Willie Gault. And I was doing a my stat was the number 3 in 1980. Why is 3 significant?
1980?
Yeah.
Because he returned a punt, a kickoff, and caught a touchdown in a game.
No, he just returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns.
Oh, well, that's pretty good too.
That's still pretty darn good. He was the only player to do that until Evan Berry in 2015 did the same thing. The younger brother of Eric Berry.
Returned 3 kickoffs for a touchdown in a game?
No, in a season. Season.
All right.
Yeah, Evan Berry returned 3 kickoffs for a touchdown in a season in 2015. But Willie Gault was also Willie Gault was also an incredible receiver. I mean, he finished his career with over 1,500 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns and returned a punt for a touchdown as a senior. Pretty much did do it all as a guy with the ball in his hands. I mean, this is the type of the guy that, like, you try to put the ball in their hands and then figure out what they're going to do. And also was the key part of why Tennessee upset Alabama. Dave, I don't know if you know the story in 82. Johnny Majors tells a story all the time where he was really trying to get the program to the next level. And the week before the Alabama game, they tie a really good LSU team. And that's when they decided to go to the 3 wide receiver set. And nobody in the SEC was doing 3 wide receivers during that time. And they decided if we add this extra wide receiver to the SEC, we have a bunch of track stars because he said they had the greatest track program in the SEC during that time.
You know, what's so funny is nowadays 3 receivers is almost it almost feels like conservative or the norm.
It's the norm. It's the norm. But in 1982, it was revolutionary.
No, it absolutely was. All right. Hooker's Corner coming up next. We're going to talk some recruiting, as they like to call it, and Tennessee with a commitment over the weekend.
Well, we got to talk.
Yes.
We do need to talk about we wanted to have our little debate over because Florida State revealed another debate between us this weekend.
Okay. Lay it on me. Where are we?
So I got a column up, guys, about Florida State and them losing to Georgia Tech. And it's a warning sign I've always given you guys, which is this. This validates my decision, my feeling that Tennessee was right to back out of the Army game. Scheduling gimmicky opponents to lesser teams that could beat you is dangerous on its own. It is crazy to schedule them in Ireland. I think Florida State would have been better off scheduling Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech rather than going to Ireland to face a team that returns all of its starters on defense while you're breaking in a new offense. And this is why I said with Tennessee, one of my biggest pet peeves with Tennessee over the years has been when they schedule service academies that are very disciplined and run the triple option. You can mess up your whole season playing those games even when you win. And my rule is just run from them.
You were right. You're not anymore. That notion's antiquated. Because now you can still make the college football playoff, which is why the regular season is more interesting. You could lose to one of those service academies. Plus, it gives back to our military because they're the paid opponents that come in to your stadium like Chattanooga will, and they cash a check for like $850,000. Now, I'm not saying our military needs the money, but
have you seen our defense budget?
I know. But I am also saying that those young men get an awful lot of exposure. So I like seeing Tennessee playing the service academies. And if you don't want to play a triple option team like Georgia Tech used to be back in the day, I understand that argument. But playing the service academies to me is something special, especially considering that Tennessee lost 4 of its current players in World War II, and that's why their numbers are retired. So to me, and the volunteer moniker comes from volunteering for military service. So you got me if you're Georgia, if you're anybody else, if you're Miami, but Tennessee, I believe, has always had a strong attachment. They played the service academies before, and I think it helps them in their exposure. So I'm all up for scheduling those guys. And I think Tennessee is going to be so talented, they're not going to lose to them.
I think it doesn't matter if they lose. See, the thing with Florida State over the weekend, even if Florida State had won, okay, Dave, think about this. The trip to Ireland, you know how me and you said on Friday that was going to be a sloppy game, right? Being a game in Dublin.
And I knew one, and I felt this firmly. One team would treat it more like a business trip than the other, and that was Georgia Tech. Had it been flip-flop, Florida State has a more talented roster. They would have won by 30, right?
Exactly. Florida State was excited to go to Ireland.
Whee!
And
let's have some Guinness.
Exactly. And you're right. It was a business trip, and Georgia Tech treated it as such, and they win. The problem with these type of games, if you're Florida State there, or if you're Tennessee playing a service academy, it's not just if you win or lose. You mentally drain yourself and also physically drain yourself. The worst decision Tennessee ever made, and I believe they cost themselves a national championship, Dave, and you can think I'm crazy on this. The year David Cutcliffe came back in 2006, I thought they had a national title caliber team after that season opening win over Cal, where they jumped out to a 35-0 lead. They decided it was a good idea to play a service academy the next week before Florida, sandwiched between 2 top 10 teams playing Air Force. They have to, on the fly, prepare for the triple option. They weren't ready. They almost lose that game. They win 31-30, but most importantly, in the fight of trying to win that game, Inky Johnson suffers a career-ending injury, and they lose Justin Harrell for the year from a torn bicep in his muscle. If those 2 kids stay on that team, Dave, Tennessee beats Florida the next week. They lost 21-20, and they may go out and win the national title.
I don't think those injuries had any Those two injuries, though, could have happened against Georgia Tech, and they could have happened against anybody. And I hate what happened to Inky because that affected the rest of his life. But you're talking about a guy that he went up against that is not physically more gifted than him. I hate to tell you, but a lot of the receivers that he went up against were more physically gifted in terms of size. So I would actually argue that his terrible, terrible injury, and prayers to him as he continues to be an incredible speaker, an awesome man, it was as apt to happen against a more athletic SEC team as a Service Academy. I don't know. It wasn't connection.
Because it was the play. That type of play doesn't happen against a regular SEC team, which is that Air Force was so committed to the triple option. What they try to do is to catch you off guard with the pass every now and then, and that was a floater down the sideline. And Inky Johnson, shifting to his right, focused on the triple option, gets caught, and there's that pass coming, and he's trying to close to finish the play, and he's going full speed ahead, trying to close to finish the play. He's not having to close out at that level of speed if he's playing in an SEC program because he's not as focused and worried about the triple option and trying to stop that. So It was the play that led to the injury more than it was the physicality of the player he was trying to tackle.
Okay, let's agree to disagree on that, because I think play action could have done the same thing, but I respect your opinion. Then what about NC State? In a game in Charlotte, is that gimmicky? Is that something that Tennessee should have scheduled?
No, because Tennessee was right. Charlotte is East Coast time. It's in North Carolina. Nothing is going to throw Tennessee off playing that game at all. You're not going to be if they played him in Ireland, I'd be like, what the heck are you doing playing in Ireland?
Okay, so whoa, you lost me. So you don't have a problem with the NC State game? I thought you said
I don't.
Okay.
I have.
Okay, here's why I have a problem with the NC State game is I will argue that outside of your conference, you should play the biggest cream puffs in the history of man because you've got a college football playoff and you can get in it. So I wouldn't play any mid-ranked team that could upset you. I also would argue this, that you're already recruiting well in Charlotte. All you can do is go there and hurt your recruiting if you don't show up. I think the NC State game in Charlotte is worse than any Service Academy in Neyland.
Here's the problem, Dave, though. You need to play, you need a better schedule strength more now with the college football playoff than you did when it was 4 teams or 2 teams. Because 4 teams or 2 teams records were like too long. It was effectively double elimination, right? Didn't matter if your schedule was tough or easy. If you lose 2 games, you're out, unless you're LSU 07. Tennessee has a very weak SEC schedule this year. They need if it comes down to them and another SEC team that are both 9-3, 10-2-ish, they need something to boost their schedule strength, and that's what NC State does. And as Dylan points out, NC State's not a gimmicky opponent. Like, again, a Service Academy is a gimmicky opponent. And
it's a gimmicky game. Let me change what I said.
Okay. But I don't even think that's a gimmicky game. It's in a neutral site between 2 regular good football teams that, like, it's, again, gimmicky is going to Ireland for a conference game. Gimmicky is playing a triple option team and they're non-conference. Those are gimmicky. But playing a good Power 5 team, I guess now Power 4, on a neutral site, that's what Tennessee's done its whole history in football.
I think it's incredibly gimmicky. There's no I kind of understood the battle at Bristol, because if you ever go, I don't know how much time you spent in the Tri-Cities, but it's like you're either a Virginia Tech fan or you're a Tennessee fan. So there's kind of a rivalry there, even though they've barely ever played. So that at least made some sense. The NC State thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, I knew, when was that game scheduled? 2-3 years ago? Maybe you can check me on that. But you know that Dave Doran may not be the greatest coach in the world, but he's at least solid. So you're going to face a decent opponent. You give away a home game. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think you help yourself because it's another quality win if you win. You got to get quality wins on your resume now in this college football playoff era. In this 12-team playoff, they're going to value schedule strength heavily. And Dave, if Tennessee played a cream puff team, then if Tennessee's 10-2 in the SEC, you talk about Bama a couple of years ago, they would favor a 9-3 Bama over a 10-2 Tennessee.
Well, what did Pitt finish in 2022? That didn't help them at all. I don't think that didn't help them.
No, it didn't. It didn't. But also, I think when they scheduled Pitt, there was an assumption that they were going to be much better than they were. But at the same time, I think Pitt helped them in terms of coming together as a unit. They're not beating Alabama if they don't have that close Pitt win.
I totally agree with that. As it played out, it wasn't a gimmick, but it felt like a gimmick going in. On our poll question, before we get to Hooker's Corner, who are you the most concerned about other than Georgia and Tennessee's football schedule? Alabama, 46%. Oklahoma on the road, though, 36%. Florida, 16%. Kentucky, 2%. Do you have any objection to where our listeners/viewers have those games projected?
I have a major objection to the 2% that pick Kentucky.
Well, I can just meet in a parking lot. There's probably a couple of people trying to be silly. Let's get to Hooker's Corner, where Tennessee picks up a commitment and why Atlanta recruiting may have gotten a little bit more difficult. In 2 minutes, latest on recruiting, and it'll all be brought to you by Hooker's Corner, our friends at Sports Treasures, and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
And the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 24 Ford Maverick Hybrid, $25,515. 23 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,995. 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $59,757. Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Hooker's Corner. As if you haven't joined at this point, we do so at the end of every program, and increased recruiting coverage in Hooker's Corner. You can join for just $9.98 a month. The QR code is right there, and we'll also be giving away that Joe Milton helmet. It's orange with a white stripe, autographed by Joe Milton. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Typically, recruiting fans don't get excited about a 3-star commitment. But that's exactly what happened over the weekend, Friday, in fact. And Caleb, what can you tell me about Tennessee's newest ball?
Yeah, so Onis Kanembany, he committed to Tennessee out of Columbia, South Carolina. which obviously is a big deal. Tennessee wants to be able to recruit in that area as much as possible. But
what school is in South Carolina, by the way? Columbia?
The University of South Carolina.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So yes, you knew that. Conan Banny is
Williams Bosch Stadium in the middle of a train yard. Yeah, I know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, I don't like that stadium. But okay, so Conan Banny is a steal, and this is because he is a 3-star on 247 Sports and On 3, but a 4-star on Rivals and ESPN. Now, here's the thing about Conan Banny: lives in Colombia, but he is actually an overseas prospect. He was born in France, lived in London, grew up playing soccer in both countries, and his parents are from Ivory Coast. Didn't learn anything about football, didn't know a thing until he was in 8th grade. Now, again, 8th grade, he should still be a little higher along now. But you know this, Dave, a lot of kids playing football now, they're learning, like, there's a big difference if you're learning by 5th or 6th grade compared to learning by 8th or 9th grade. I mean, there just is. And he is a track star, and he played soccer, got great footwork, so he's got raw talent. And I think once he refines that, this is another guy that I think Tennessee identified very, very early, that I think will turn into a 4 or 5-star very, very, very soon. And I think I think he still is developing in a work in progress, but I think Tennessee's identified him very early.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a team as part of Hooker's Corner that you should start rooting against, and it's Georgia Tech. Now, before the win over Florida State, I told you that I heard coaching circles that Georgia Tech was in the right direction when they picked up Josh Petty, the 5-star offensive tackle commitment that Tennessee was somewhat in on. I think that even more now, because they got the win against Florida State. In the ACC, they're going to have some built-in wins, right, Caleb? And I look at the rest of Georgia Tech's commitment list. The top prospect would be Petty, Roswell, Georgia, Pinson, Tyrone, Georgia, Garrett, Bogart, Georgia. Another Georgia. Basically, their top 10 players their top 10 commitments are highest rated out of Georgia. Isaiah Groves is the next, and he's out of Cross Plains, Tennessee. So I told you last week I thought Georgia Tech was a team to watch in recruiting because I think kids would want to stay close to Atlanta if they had an option to play in the playoffs and stay close to there. Caleb, do you agree or disagree?
No, I totally agree. And guys, there is history of this. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Tennessee for a very long time played Georgia Tech annually. This was one of Johnny Major's things. He liked to play Georgia Tech annually. He thought it was a good rivalry. He thought it was good for the fans. It did Tennessee no favors. All it did was prop up Georgia Tech and allow them to be seen as on Tennessee's level as a recruiting brand, which allowed them to close off the state of Georgia even more. And here's the crazy part, Dave. Tennessee discontinued the series in 1985.
Yep, there you go.
They won the SEC in 1985, and then they entered their best period of the modern era for the next 15 to 16 years.
Here's Tech's schedule. Georgia State, who they're going to beat, you would think. Syracuse, VMI, Louisville, Duke, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, and then they'll close the season with Georgia. If that's an 8-win football team, they've got an argument to say, hey, now it might not be the right argument, but they've got an argument to say, we're a year or two away from the college football playoff. Why would you leave home when you're in the Atlanta area and you can play right downtown, which has the ability to be something cool? Right now, their facilities are garbage. But if they work that up in the middle of a downtown setting, I could see that being appealing for kids that are more comfortable in an urban area as opposed to, let's say, a rural area like most SEC schools.
Oh, yeah, it's very integrated into the downtown if you guys ever go to Georgia Tech. Very much so. And people like it, people like the city of Atlanta. And think about this. And here's the other part, Dave. And I've always talked about this is a low key for schools that invest in their football program that are academic. This is another selling point. You have a chance at a degree from Georgia Tech. That's a very good school, guys. That's a very good school. I mean, I don't understand why football programs haven't been able to build solid programs that are academically elite to say that, hey, look, you get a win-win here. Now, some have managed it, and like Stanford did in the early 2010s with Jim Harbaugh and then David Shaw. But like, if your son played football, Dave, would you not want him to? And he could go anywhere. Would you not have wanted him to go to like Stanford when they were a top 5 program back in the early 2010s?
I'll give you a more recent example. Vanderbilt found a loophole where they were able to offer this before NIL, and Vanderbilt, their baseball team was able to offer financial aid. So there were 3 or 4 really good players out of Knoxville that went to Vanderbilt because they found this loophole where essentially they were you were getting, because of baseball and you don't get full scholarships, they would give the partial scholarship, but then it's $40,000 a year to go to Vanderbilt or more. I mean, I'm sorry, that was a factor. And I think Tennessee lost a lot of recruits because of that. So I think it could be the same thing in Atlanta. So watch out for Georgia Tech. You want them to lose. Hit the like and subscribe button. We appreciate everyone for watching. And those that are a part of Hooker's Corner, don't forget, we're going to be giving away that autographed football helmet that is right behind me. You can see it. It's the orange with a white stripe. Joe Milton is autographed. Autograph is right on there. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a